Okay, today I'm going to be talking about Alfred Lord Tennyson's The Charge of the Light Brigade. And so Tennyson wrote this poem in response to a battle that was fought during the Crimean War. Just a little bit of kind of background context on that. From 1853 to 1856, the British, the French, and the Ottoman Turkish were engaged in the Crimean War with Russia, and it all kind of started over a strait, the Strait of Gallipoli, which is also called the Dardanelles. And that's which was a really kind of a significant international waterway then and even today. This strait forms part of the boundary between Asia and Europe, and control of this strait, because it allowed access. It was a thoroughfare to larger bodies of water, including the Black Sea, and so control of this was kind of like a really big deal. And at the time, the British were kind of in control of this strait, and Russia wanted control of it. And so there you go. We have something that you want. We're going to take it. Well, you have something that we want. I'm sorry. You have something that we want, so we're going to take it. And so thus we have a war. So, in this particular battle in this Crimean War, was called the Battle of Balaclava, and it was essentially what Tennyson saw kind of as a suicidal charge. And so this poem is very much Tennyson's response to that battle, as a way to honor the patriotism and the bravery of the men that fought in the Battle of Balaclava. A weird little side note, too, if you're a kind of a history buff, Florence Nightingale, who really kind of set the standards for modern day nursing, also got her notoriety there. She's one of the most famous British women in history. She was called the Lady of the Lamp, and so she did nursing wounded soldiers during the Crimean War. That's just not even related to this poem, but just never know when you might need to use it in trivia. So let's talk about, well, let's read the poem and then we'll talk about the poem and break it down. So, half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward the light brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward the light brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why. There's but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well. Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell rode the 600. Flashed all their sabers bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabering the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cossack and Russian reeled from the saber stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell, all that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made, all the world wondered. Honor the charge they made, honor the Light Brigade, noble 600. So there were like 637 men in this light brigade. And so the difference between like a light and a heavy brigade, is just the amount of like armor and artilleries. So a heavy brigade would back then would have had like horses, like heavier horses that carried a lot of armor. It would have had some gun power, cannon power, there. And the light brigade would have been unarmored horses, and infantry on foot, and they would have had only like sabers, not a whole lot of firepower there. And so what kind of happened here was these men, there was a kind of an error in there was a like a breakdown of communication, and so this light brigade was given the orders to march to a specific place, where they would meet the Russian troops, and then a lot of things that they got the message wrong. The messenger transmitted the wrong message, or an error in the message, or they just didn't receive the message the way that it was intended. Not really sure which of those is the right thing, but regardless of the fact, they weren't where they were supposed to be. They were behind another flank that was supposed to be meeting them there at that spot. And so the 637 men literally marched straight into Russian firepower, like cannons, heavy machinery, machine gun, that kind of thing. And like they marched straight into it. So it was like a catfish rodeo. Like these guys were just kind of like ripe for the picking, and and they had no protection. It was out in the middle of an open field. And so they literally marched knowing that it was like a certain death. They marched in anyway. So in the first stanza, um I think it's interesting here that in the very first stanza, Tennyson makes reference to Psalms 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. The men knew that they were riding into certain danger, yet they took kind of comfort in the fact that God was with them. And so in the second stanza, they knew that there was a blunder, but they pressed on anyway to do the duty that they had come to do. It wasn't their job, it wasn't their responsibility or their place, I guess, to make a reply, to question. Um, but their only sole purpose was to keep marching, to do or and die. So they simply saw it as their duty to follow the command, regardless, and do what they came to do. So number three, stanza three, kind of refers to the situation that they were in, where they had cannons all around them, surrounding them. Cannons are firing from all sides of them, but they rode in boldly into the mouth of hell, and they knew that they were trapped. But they rode well, so they did it with honor. They did it with valor, with bravery, and so as a reader, like we can imagine them riding in and terrified, obviously, but holding their heads high, into the jaws of death. These guys that were willing to die for their country. So in the fourth stanza, the rest of the world wondered why. So the and so here Tennyson is kind of like making a point to say, like the world wondered why this was happening. Not that they were aware of it, obviously, at the time, but why in the world were they going into this certain death, the suicide mission? But the soldiers themselves just simply knew that it was their job, it was their duty to go in. So some of them did make it out alive, but not the total amount that went in, not the 600 there. History reveals to us that 247 men of the men that went into that battle returned home. So 600 and 37 in and 247 out. So yeah, it was a massacre of epic proportion. Again, he returns to the cannon to the right, cannon to the left, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered. Um, they came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell, all that was left of them. And it was miraculous that 247 of them even lived through this, because it was such a massacre. And then the last stanza is the charge that Tennyson is making. Honor them, remember them, don't forget their sacrifice. when can their glory fade? They should ever be remembered for their honor, marching bravely into the valley of death. And so, kind of reminding generations forward that, of their honor and their glory and the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice that they make, the dead and the living that had to live through that. Studies show us that people that come through those kinds of battles where there's so much death, and it's, they never really recover. They're never really ever the same again. So honor the dead and the living, and honor the sacrifice that the noble 600 made in this battle.